This week's portion is Bamidbar. It's the beginning of the book of Numbers. And the opening of the portion starts with the census. And the question that's asked, there are a couple questions. Why does the Torah relate all of the details of the counting of the tribes and not just the number all at once? And also it says it several times, not just one time. And is it the numbers that count? What's important here? Why is it being counted? I mean, we're such a small nation as it is, so why count us? Because usually we know that counting is not something that we do. It usually brings evil eye. We usually don't count what we have. We don't count our children. If someone comes to your house and starts counting your bedrooms or your cars, you just have to be careful. So what does this mean? Why are we counting? So there's a couple of reasons. One, when the Jews left Egypt and they entered the Sinai desert, there was a war, a spiritual war, and we're going to get back to that later, what the spiritual war was. And we can see that before any war, whether it was physical or spiritual, the Jews were counted. They were counted when they were in Egypt, and they were counted so that they wouldn't assimilate. Hi. Come sit on this side. They were counted so they wouldn't assimilate. And then, so the question is, why were the Jews counted? We know that this portion starts with counting, the number. It's the portion of Numbers, the book of Numbers, and it starts with counting. So the question is why? Because usually we don't count. So why are they being counted? Why in such detail? Why so many times? I think it was 3 times that they were counted in this portion. So when they were in Egypt, they were counted so that they wouldn't assimilate. When they went to the Sinai desert, they were counted again because it was a spiritual war. And we can see that anytime there's any kind of war, they're counted. So why? Once an object is counted, it takes on a significance. Once that's done, once they're counted in something, it can't be disregarded or it can't be dismissed. And so every time they went to war, they were counted and they became stronger. It gave them strength. They were counted by the Creator and it gave them strength. This gave them self-esteem. Basically, if I'm important enough to be counted, then my life and my goals are important too. And Shem Shmuel, one of my favorite Kabbalists, basically, explains a little bit more about counting in our personal lives, counting by the nation and counting by the name, because in this portion they each gave a half a shekel, and while they were giving the half a shekel to Moses, they said their name. So why individual, why a group, why the counting? And it says here that each individual is tested by the challenges of their life. So Avram, we know, had 10 challenges. He had 10 tests. And we should look at life as a spiritual battlefield, a spiritual war against the evil side that is obviously trying to defeat us all the time. And in this battle, we know that courage and bravery are important. So before a battle, a special Kohen would speak to the soldiers, and he would tell them, don't let your hearts become weak. In battle, you have to be strong in your mind. You have to you have to make sure that you have the ability to win. And someone who is weak or has low self-esteem will be defeated. So this obviously is also true with spirituality, with our spiritual fight, because we have to have confidence that we'll defeat our spiritual enemy, which is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. And in order for a person to have this level of bravery and courage, he has to feel important. He has to feel strong. If he feels weak, he's not going to be able to do it. So a person should be able to feel that the whole world hangs in balance between the evil and salvation, the good, and he's the one that's in charge of it. So if I do one good deed, I'll save the world and myself from the evil, and if I do anything negative, the same thing. So it's very important for every person to think of himself in a way that he is important. And we'll talk about balancing the ego in a minute, because I know people ask about that. So the phrase that the Torah uses, raise up the heads of the Jewish people, is to express the counting. It's to show that even though literally, obviously, it means lift them up spiritually, bring them a sense of pride, it says that the hidden phrase, which is se'ur rosh, means to lift up their heads, is to give each person a good feeling and recognition. So once they were counted, they were given that sense of recognition. I count. I'm worthy of something. And that is one of the things about counting. Now, I want to just share a story. So there were two brothers, and this is a true story, by the way. There were true brothers at the opposite ends of the world in very different living conditions. One lived in a tiny apartment in Jerusalem with his wife and 12 children, and they barely had anything. And the other was a wealthy man in a large city here in the States, but he and his wife, after many years of marriage, had no children. So the wealthy one, the wealthy brother, proposed to the brother in Israel that they make a trade. He's willing to grant $1 million in exchange for any one of his 12 children. Okay, one of his 12 children. And the brother, he was so tempted because he needed the money to take care of everything. And so the night came to make the deal, and the brother had to choose the child, which child was going to be sent away. And the parents waited they waited as long as they could wait, and they looked through the apartment, and then they made their decision, and they called the brother, and they said, no deal. And the other one said, but you have 12 kids, and I don't have any, and I'm sure you can use the money. So the brother, the one who has the 12 kids, said, the deal was based on a false premise that we have 12 children. But when we looked at it carefully, my wife and I, we realized we only have one Rivka and one Shimon and one Sarah, and reducing a person to a number obviously erases who they are. And so the specialness of each individual is what's so important here. The counting is to show us how important every single person is. It's like a child. It's like a grandmother who counts their children. Every single person is so important, and that's why the counting. And now I want to share. Now I want to share a little bit about why the spiritual wars that were happening. So the reason why there was the spiritual war that was talked about in the Sinai Desert, why did they have to go through the Sinai Desert? So basically there were 4 different types of spiritual wars that needed to be fought. And the 4 wars have 4 different names. There were something called saraf, which in Hebrew actually means burn. And this symbolizes our burning desire to chase after the physicality. That was one of the wars that had to be won in the desert. The second one is the scorpion, which is the name in Hebrew for scorpion is akrav, and akrav also means coldness. And this was to symbolize the coldness which we can feel even in the face of holiness, meaning you can be in a very holy place, you can even be in Israel, but if you're not connected and you don't feel any kind of passion, then you have coldness. Then we have the snake, which symbolizes our ability to lie and manipulate even ourselves. So we can even lie to ourselves and manipulate ourselves. And there's a fourth one that was called thirst. And this symbolizes the lack of spirituality which can overtake us in the wrong environment. And I want to talk a little bit about this because I think I also spoke about it last week. These four kinds of spiritual wars were the things that they had to go through in the desert in order to be able to enter the land of Israel. Now, the fourth one, which is the lack of spirituality if we're in the wrong environment, this can really have an effect on us. And it says, according to Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag, that the only free will we actually have is to choose our environment. And I was actually talking to somebody on the phone today, and we were discussing something that we want to do and a project that we're doing soon in Vital. And I said to him, why don't you talk to so-and-so? And he said to me, you know what? I decided that I'm only going to connect to people who really want to make a difference in their lives and in the world. And people who are takers and who really don't care, I need to distance myself from it. And really, that's the only choice we have, is to choose who we surround ourselves with and where we are. What? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, nothing.
Okay. So counting the Jews was meant to give them strength to overcome the obstacles that they were going to be challenged with. And this is also why when counting, the Torah mentions 4 different parameters. They say names, individuals, families, and tribes. And each one was to eliminate one of those 4 powers of evil in the desert. Because there's a place in the portion of Pinchas where they're counted, and it's very different than here. When they're counted here, it talks about the heads of the tribes, the princes of the tribes, the families they came from, the flags that they had according to each 3 tribes had their own place where they were. So it really pointed out that there's the individual, and then there's the unity, the union of everybody. Any questions so far? We're good so far? Okay. So the land of Israel we know, really unites the Jewish people, and we see it today. But not every Jew, and this is tough, not every Jew deserves to live in it. There are people who try to live in Israel and can't make it, and then there are people who go there and they feel at home. So the purpose of the counting was in order to determine if that person was refined enough, spiritual enough to live in the land. So that's also something that comes up in the counting. And it talks about the collective and the individual, and I want to go into that because there are certain things that we need to do as a collective nation, and there are certain things that we do as individuals. And it says that there are 3 pillars that the world stands on. There's the Torah, the work, and the Chasadim, and we're going to talk about each one of them. So the Torah, which means the studying and the service of God and the mitzvot. So Torah study is primarily an individual mitzvah. We study, even if we sit in a group, we can all be studying one thing, but each person has their own experience. Like in classes, I know I've been in classes where I've been in a class studying with somebody, and me and this other person are listening to the same person speak, and we each have our own interpretation of it. So really, when you do Torah study, even if you're in a group, it's an individual thing, because learning Torah is an individual experience. So each person learns in his own way and grasps the Torah in his own way. And this is really the way it should be, because the same way that no 2 people look exactly the same, so people's minds are obviously different. And no 2 people think exactly the same way. And even identical twins I used to know a couple of identical twins, and they are completely different. They look the same, but they don't think the same. Because every human's personality is unique in its own way. So that's the first pillar, and that's an individual, as an individual. Then the second pillar of the world is, which is called avodah, is really prayer. And prayer has to be done together. We're the only religion where you need 10 men to have a minyan in order to pray. So for hundreds of years, we had the Beit HaMikdash, and we had the Mishkan, and we had the different sacrifices that we would bring. And the nation as a whole was the prime body that performed the prayer. The sacrifices, everything was done together. So in our day, obviously, we need 10 men to make the minyan. And it says that a person's prayers are heard only as part of a congregation. Because it says that, in the Gemara, it says that the Creator does not reject the prayers of the many. So praying in a group is the most important thing that we can do. And there's something that I heard from Rav Soloveitchik. Every Jew turns towards Yerushalayim, right, to do the Amidah. Everybody turns to Yerushalayim. When Shlomo HaMelech built the Beit HaMikdash, he said that everyone will pray in the direction of the holy place, right, of the Beit HaMikdash. So what is the idea of everyone facing towards the same place when they pray? The idea is that no matter where I am in the world, if I'm in Australia, if I'm in New York, if I'm in wherever I am, we're all facing the same way. We're all facing towards Yerushalayim. And the power of the unity of the international prayer is really the power. So as a collective, we're praying together. And the Shem Mushmel says that in this portion, in Bamidbar, Moshe counted the people who left Egypt, received the Torah, and then built the Mishkan. So the people who left Egypt, the people who received the Torah, and the people who built the Mishkan. And in this count, the names of the people and their families are mentioned. Why? Because their personal names emphasize the importance as individuals. And on the other hand, their family and their tribe represent the group. That's why the count had a duality in it. It had the personal and it had the group. And then this duality was also emphasized because the generation that received the Torah as individuals also built the Mishkan as a community. So you have there the duality all their time. And their main accomplishment was that they entered the land of Israel as a nation. So in that count, only their collective nature was emphasized. In the count of entering Israel, they were as a nation. The third pillar is Gemilut Chasadim, which is doing chesed. And this is a combination of the individual and the group. Because the individual who does chesed is part of a community as a whole who's doing acts of chesed. And their acts of kindness they exceed everything, because every single person can do one little part of chesed, but as a organization, as a community, we can bring an amazing amount of chesed to the world. So that's the duality of the individual and the community. Questions so far? Are we good? Okay. So now I want to go on to the special place of each individual. So the Shem Mishmuel explains that obviously each individual has the major challenges, and we talked about the balance between self-worth, and now we're going to talk about self-worth and vanity, because we talked about the importance of understanding that I'm important, I'm being counted, which means I'm significant, and I can tip the scale of the balance between how the world is going to be. If my actions are going to be actions of positivity, then I can tip the scales to positivity. Same with negativity. So I need to recognize that I'm a messenger of the Creator, and I'm important because God made me important. And when I think of the Creator and of myself, then I will have then I can have a sense of annulment of myself. What does this mean? If I understand that I'm this small, then I can understand that I'm really not as significant in the whole picture. So at the same time, you have to have both. You have to know that you're important, and you have to know that you're a little cog in the wheel. And that's really the balance between who I am. And it says that when we go out in the morning to work, we need to think that we're the only ones that are going to make it happen. Okay? Now let's say you had an amazing day and you made everything happen. When you come home at night, you need to realize that everything that happened was from the Creator. Because we think that we work hard and we earn what we earn because we work hard. No, we actually are getting gifts from the Creator. Everything that we have, compared to what we do, is 10 times more. The Creator is endlessly giving us gifts. And if we can have that, that's why also we have a mezuzah. So that when we go out, we understand that we have the Creator with us, but we need to do the work. And when we come back, we understand that the Creator is with us, and because of that, we were able to obtain all the gifts that we have in our life. And this combination really is the way that we can overcome our spiritual battles, because we started with spiritual battles. We have the physical wars that every time that the nation of Israel went out to a physical war, they were counted, and also the spiritual war. So the way that we can actually overcome our spiritual wars is to know that I am something, and I can fight the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and I'm powerful enough to fight and defeat him. And in relation to the Creator, though, I'm tiny, to have that balance all the time. And this is what brings us to the famous statement that the Magid of Mezlich said. And he said, Anochi omed ben Hashem ubenechem. I stood between you and Hashem at Sinai. The Magid said that the concept of Anochi means Anochi in Hebrew also means Anochi, I'm selfish. I have too much pride. And what stands between us and the Creator? Our pride. So we have to be confident and brave in our battle against evil, and we have to be stubborn, obviously, and we have to stand against our evil till the very end. And at the same time, we have to recognize our total insignificance in relation to the Creator. And when we keep both of these in mind, then we can be victorious in our battle, our spiritual battle in life. So, now I want to ask you guys a question. Where is your spiritual battle? And how do you think you can overcome it by balancing these two things? Go ahead.
I'm, at the moment, almost totally taken over by the Yetzer Hara.
Okay.
And I'm watching it, and I'm like, I can't believe it. That.
So what do you think you could do to make a difference there?
Well, you can choose where you live, and you can choose who you live. And you
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's the first step.
I thought that I heard the Rebbe say, what the Rebbe say, the only thing, or he got it from someone else, but the only thing you have free choice over is what you believe. And from there stems everything else. But now you're saying something different.
Yes. According to Rav Ashlag, that's the only free will you have.
You see, that could have made all the difference.
Because everything else, imagine our life is like a movie theater. We have 15 movies playing, and we can choose which one to go to. But when you choose which movie to go to, you're also choosing what movie you're going to see. Are you going to see a romance? Are you going to see a scary movie? Are you going to see... What are you going to connect to? Because you exist in many levels. And whatever you decide, the actual free will is to decide where you're going to be.
I thought I had free will, but I also see that a choice that I made...
Well, you have consequences.
Yeah,
there's cause and effect.
Right.
And the cause and effect is not... One of the things that was created in the beginning with cause and effect is that cause and effect don't happen right away. If they happen right away, it would be a world of judgment. Because you did something negative, you would get the effect right away. What happens today is we have cause and effect. A cause can happen 20 years before the effect, and then we don't understand because we don't remember what we did 20 years ago.
But what the challenge right now is remembering, really, really in a place.
So that's one of the spiritual battles that we can overcome. And I was thinking about the counting because, counting people, counting, what I learned was counting makes something significant, right? We learn on one hand, you're not supposed to count your money. You're not supposed to let somebody count what you have. If someone goes into your house and they start counting, run away because it's evil eye. But counting your blessings, that will help you understand where you are and what you can overcome. counting the things, the gifts that you got from the Creator. Counting the things in your life brings appreciation. So counting people, really, it's like the Creator counting every single Jew because they're so dear to Him. Where so every single person is very, very close to the Creator and dear to the Creator. And our job is to be able to fight that spiritual war. Because obviously today we're not all fighting the physical war, but we have a spiritual war. And every single Jew, I believe, has a part in this physical war, and that part is our spiritual war. If we can overcome our spiritual wars, we can make a domino effect in the world. No question about it. I have had this conversation so many times with people that are not Jewish, or Jewish, what's the chosen people? What were we chosen for? It's not that we're better. It's not that we are smarter. It's that we were chosen to do a job. And we haven't taken that responsibility yet. Our job is to tip the scales in the world. That's our job. Our job is to make sure that our spiritual wars will be overcome on an individual level so that we can come together in unity as a community, as a congregation, to overcome everything else. Because everybody has their individual war and the war that's happening. Do you want to share?
So, I mean, you're saying, we're not on the video, right?
It'll be edited out, don't worry. You're not on the video, you can't see you.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just saying, what is our spiritual war? Like, in terms of what, like?
Personal. I mean, if you want to share, you don't have to, but yeah.
I'm not sure. Like, is there another question you might ask me that's more specific? Like,
Well, what are the things that are hard for you to overcome spiritually? Not physically. Physically is going to the gym, all that it's nice, but it's not. Usually it's things between you and another person. Usually our spiritual war is something that's between us and another person in a relationship, because there is no other spiritual war. The only spiritual war that we have to overcome is how we treat each other.
well, maybe like, I mean, it's something I'm trying to work through, but like accepting that whatever is done to me, even if it's hurtful, that it's like, it's from Hashem, but sometimes it's hard to not.
So that's.
To not, like, to accept that it's from Hashem if someone hurt to me, like, it's like, and like not say, okay, this is what Hashem wanted me to, because I know like nobody, you learn from the duties of the heart that nobody can hurt you or harm you.
Exactly.
It's not Hashem's will.
Right.
But sometimes it's like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
It's hard.
And it's like, I don't understand why somebody did this or how, whatever it was.
So obviously, you've heard of don't kill the messenger, right? Yeah. So usually those things are messages for us. And our spiritual war there would be to not fall into why this person did it, rather, what is he saying, and what am I supposed to learn from it? Because what gets hurt when someone says something hurtful? Not.
It could also be an action, I'm saying, like maybe something.
An action. Same thing.
And sometimes I try to think about, like what you're saying, like it could be, like I did something, like we say like the music and
right, cause and effect.
So maybe I did something similar like 10 years ago and now I'm getting my punishment or something.
It's not a punishment. It's so that you can learn. It's usually something, if something is done to us or said to us, it's not that whatever is in our world, it doesn't happen to us. It's we chose it. Now, how did we choose it? By either planting negative seeds or not listening to messages that we're supposed to get that the Creator is trying to tell us. And so then we get these messages in different ways. So that's actually mercy, to get the messages through someone who's saying something or did something to you that was hurtful instead of you suffering something physically. So if we stop, and this is the hardest, if we stop and say, okay, this person did this, or this person said that, and it's annoying and hurtful, but what am I supposed to get from it? And that's where we need to and it's hard, we need to disconnect ourselves, sort of like from above, look at it. Disconnect ourselves from the situation, because what gets hurt? Our ego gets hurt because our soul doesn't get hurt. Because we have the body and the soul. Our soul doesn't get hurt. Our soul can't get hurt, can't get insulted, can't get jealous. Our soul knows the truth. But we, our body consciousness, has to connect to what is the message. And only you can know that. Nobody else can know that for you. And we usually know it. We just don't want to deal with it. And that's why it keeps coming back through other people. But that is actually mercy. Because we don't want to get the judgment. The judgment is when something physically, God forbid somebody gets sick, or that's when already we haven't listened. And it's hard. It's hard when someone does something, for sure, because we're human beings and we get hurt. We get hurt. They hurt our feelings. They did something that wasn't nice, or whatever it is, they made us fall into a situation. Whatever it is, it's if we can stop and say, okay, what did I not hear last time? Or what am I hearing now? How can I take out, okay, this person, take them out of the equation. What are they saying? What are their words? Even to write down their words and see where that makes sense into something that we aren't listening to in our lives. It has nothing to do with them at all. They're just puppets of the Creator. They're just talking. And so if we can disconnect that and say, okay, this person is a puppet of the Creator now, saying things that we're supposed to hear, and we don't want to hear them because they're coming from someone that we don't want to listen to. But that's also the Creator. But that's also the Creator. Because if we believe that every single person comes from the Creator, then we believe that was also created by the Creator. And that's hard. That's one of the spiritual battles that we go through. But going back to the numbers and going back to the unity. So there's a transition here because now we're in the time of the Alma, we're in the time of counting, and we're between Pesach and Shavuot. So the transition between Pesach and Shavuot, Pesach is the holiday of unity, of everyone, of the Klal. The Jewish people marched out of Egypt, right? They were out of Mitzrayim. They suffered together and they were redeemed together. And the sacrifice of Pesach is a group mitzvah. That's why you need to do the Seder in a group. You can't do it by yourself. And during the Omer, we count the days and the weeks towards Shavuot, and we prepare for Shavuot by working on ourselves, working on V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, loving the neighbor as thyself. That's one of the biggest things that we need to work on during this time, is how can we love our fellow person. And that doesn't mean that I have to love them, but respect, help, reach out, things like that. So we each work on that and we prepare ourselves for Matan Torah. And Eliyahu is always repeating something. In the past week, he says, we're coming to Shavuot, which is Matan Torah, is the giving of the Torah. It doesn't mean that we receive it, but it's the giving. If we want to receive it, that's up to us. So the Am Yisrael in the desert also prepared themselves to receive the Torah. This is what they went through in the desert. And this was an individual experience. So each person had his or own special place to stand on their spiritual level. And Moses stood alone at the top of the mountain, right? And Aaron had his own spot. And so did Yoshua and Nadav and Avihu. And it was a personal experience. Every single Jew had to be there because of his preciousness as an individual. And that's something that we also don't understand, is that every single person is important. And that if one of us is missing, it's as if all of us are missing. It's like you can't have a finger that doesn't work, because then your whole hand is out of whack. So it's the same thing. We are all part of one big thing. So it's like to say that in Chassidut, they say that the word Israel is the acronym for Yesh Shishim Ribo Osiot LaTorah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. The number 600,000 is obviously the mystical number of the Jewish people that received the Torah and that were in the desert. And it says, and I don't know if somebody wants to check it, that when the state of Israel was founded in 1948, there were about 600,000 Jews there. So it's like it's reincarnation. It's us working on it again and again and again. So again, it's about the individual and the collective. Understanding that as individuals, we were counted because each one of us has an important job in the collective consciousness of the Jewish nation. And at the same time, to understand that we are part of the collective. We are part of something that if one of us doesn't do our job, we're bringing everybody else down. It says that if we understood how many souls are connected to us on a spiritual level, we would understand our responsibility, because everything that we do affects thousands and thousands of people, and we don't even know that.
There was a lecture that Eliot gave 4 years ago about trees and branches. And he said, it was in the same lecture, but I don't know if it had to do with trees and branches, but that we're going to learn lessons, good, in a good way, or we're going to learn lessons by pain.
Right.
We're going to learn the lessons.
Right.
How do you want to learn them? Was
Yes.
that in that lecture?
I don't know if it was in this lecture, but yes, that's something that is the basis of Kabbalah, is that we can choose pain or suffering. So everybody goes through pain. That's how we grow. Everybody has pain. But suffering is a choice. So what is suffering? Suffering is when we experience the same thing over and over and over and over. And that is something we don't have to do. That's something that if we don't learn the lesson, then it's going to be suffering. Pain is normal. Pain is normal. Pain is something that, we're human beings and we get very complacent. And if everything is good in our life and we have all the money we want, we're married, we have children, we have grandchildren, we have houses, we have a private airplane, everything is great, then we're not going to look for spiritual growth. So pain comes up once in a while, and pain doesn't have to be physical pain. It can also be spiritual pain. It can be a heartache or whatever it is. But when that pain comes, then we can decide to deal with it or to run away from it. If we run away from it, it becomes suffering because it's going to come back. And that's where, again, it's the free will of where we are and who we surround ourselves with. Because where we are and who we surround ourselves with is also how we're going to deal with the challenges in our life. And that's where the individual and the collective is so important. Because me as an individual, I know that I want to be part of mitzvot and Torah. So I have to put myself in a collective community that is also going to study and is also going to do things. Because if I put myself in a collective community that's not important, eventually it's going to affect me. And that's why I had that conversation today with someone who said, listen, I'm not that strong. I have to make sure that I put myself in a collective community that wants to keep mitzvot, that wants to do the holidays, that wants to help. Otherwise, I'm going to be attacked with the evil inclination, and I'm not that strong. So if I know that I'm not that strong, why would I put myself in that situation? And that's where we can see ourselves and the Creator. Where are we in front of the Creator? Are we striving to get closer? Do we understand that we're this small? And at the same time understand that we're this big? Because if I don't do the mitzvah, nobody else will do it. That's how we need to think when we go to do a mitzvah. To actually think, I'm so important that I have to do this. And if I think like that, then I'll push myself more and more. If I think that I'm important and I have self-esteem and I know that I can make this happen, I can also affect everyone around me. But if I get up in the morning and, I'm nothing, I can't do it, I'm not strong enough, then you're taking everybody else down with you. And that's something that we also need to believe and understand, is that we have the power to either lift up everybody around us or bring everybody else down.
Well, Eliana last week said that if you're going on a diet and you shouldn't eat candy, like the candy store. I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah, that's exactly. There are challenges that you can overcome, but then don't put yourself in a situation that you can't overcome it. And like our big thing in our family now is a diet. Like we're all on diets for health and for other reasons. But so now we can't, bake because, we're all telling our daughter, don't bake because we're not that strong. If we're going to look at the cookie for the next 3 days, it's going to get eaten. So don't bake. So don't put yourself in a situation. And there's a lot of things in the Gemara also that say, if you have two paths and one path takes you through a place where you're going to smell non-kosher food and it's going to tempt you and you don't know if you're strong enough, don't go down that path. Go down a different path. Find a way in your life that you aren't putting yourself in a situation that you know that you're not strong enough to overcome. There's no reason. No reason. It's like addicts, obviously, don't go to a bar and think you're going to be strong enough not to drink if you have a drinking problem. It's the same thing. Don't put yourself in a situation that there are challenges that are going to come into our life that we have to overcome. We don't have a choice. But then there are challenges that we don't have to put in front of ourselves. We have enough challenges that we don't have to put ourselves in front of these challenges that don't need to be there. There are challenges for our spiritual growth where I need to study more, I need to do chesed more, but there are challenges that I don't need to put on myself. The Creator will take care of that. We don't have to do that to ourselves. Okay, guys, that is it for today, unless you have more questions. Okay? Yes, go ahead.
So you talk about the importance of counting.
Yes.
But I know that I think when they count, I don't know, when we count people, like, do we?
No, so that's why they gave half a shekel. They gave half a shekel because you're not supposed to count people, right? But they gave a half a shekel and then they said their name. And Moses wrote everything down. So yeah, you're not supposed to count. You're not supposed to count because you could bring evil eye down. But this is a counting that was done so that the Creator could give more strength to the people. So the person wasn't actually counted, but each person gave a half a shekel.
Oh, the counting of the shekel. Okay.
Yes. So the only difference with this counting and the other counting was that in this counting, they actually wrote down the names. And that was because it was a time of war, spiritual and physical, and they needed that extra strength from the Creator to say, I am important.
Right.
But the heads were not actually counted. It was the half a shekel. Okay. Thank you, guys.